Welcome to the Trump Breaking News Network, your daily source for up-to-the-minute Trump news. Join us today and every day. Here's today's news.
This is TBNN.
Congress reaches deal to keep government open through September. Zero hedge. Update: Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer seems very positive on the bipartisan agreement too, but can't resist a few jabs at President Trump. This agreement is a good agreement for the American people, and takes the threat of a government shutdown off the table. The bill ensures taxpayer dollars aren't used to fund an ineffective border wall, excludes poison pill riders, and increases investments in programs that the middle class relies on, like medical research, education, and infrastructure. Early on in this debate, Democrats clearly laid out our principles. And the deal reflects those principles. As we detailed eariler, one of the biggest political overhangs facing the market may have just been removed, when moments ago AP and other newswires reported that House Democrats and Republicans are said to have reached a $1 trillion spending deal to keep the government, which is currently operating thanks to a last-minute one-week stopgap measure enacted on Friday, open until October 1st. Breaking: Congressional Republicans, Democrats reach agreement on $1 trillion measure to fund government until October 1st. According to Washington Post, negotiators from both parties reached an agreement on a spending package to fund the government through the end of September, alleviating fears of a government shutdown later this week. Congress is expected to vote early this week on the package, with the bipartisan agreements expected to include increases for military spending and border security, a major priority for GOP leaders in Congress. Several other important White House initiatives were rejected by the Republican and Democratic negotiators, including money for a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border that Trump has argued is needed to stop illegal immigrants and drugs. Instead, congressional negotiators settled on $1.5 billion more for border security, including more money for new technology and repairing existing infrastructure, the aide said. The Trump administration had earlier backed away from a threat to end federal subsidies for low-income people to get health insurance through Obamacare, the program that Trump had pledged to repeal. Puerto Rico would get an emergency injection of $295 million in additional funding for its Medicaid health insurance program for the poor, according to the aide who asked not to be identified. The impoverished island, which is a U.S. territory, is facing a severe Medicaid funding shortfall. Democrats also fended off potential cuts to women's healthcare provider Planned Parenthood, while House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi applauded a nearly $2 billion hike in funds for the National Institutes of Health this year. Coal miners and their families facing the loss of health insurance next month would get a permanent renewal under the spending bill. There is a non-trivial chance the Sunday night announcement is merely a trial balloon, because as the WAPO adds, the details of the agreement were not yet clear on Sunday night, which would suggest that there is a high likelihood that whatever tentative deal was reached, ultimately falls through. For now, however, this is good news, and it has sent both the pound and yen sliding, and the dollar rising on hopes that politics will not be a major risk factor for at least 5 months. House Republicans have struggled in recent weeks to keep their members focused on spending as White House officials and conservatives pressed leaders to revive plans for a vote on healthcare legislation. The healthcare fight became tangled last week with the spending talks as leaders worried that forcing a vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act risked angering Democrats whose votes are necessary to avoid a government shutdown. Another possible threat is that the GOP pushes on with Obamacare repeal, a gambit which may prompt Democrats to withdraw any support they voiced for Sunday's deal. GOP leaders worked last week to determine if there are enough votes in the House to pass a revised healthcare bill brokered by the White House, the head of the conservative House Freedom Caucus and a top member of the moderate Tuesday group. House Speaker Paul D. Ryan, Republican Wisconsin, and his top lieutenants announced Thursday that they did not have sufficient votes to be sure the healthcare bill would pass, but vowed to press on. "We're still educating members," House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican California, told reporters after a late-night healthcare meeting last week. "We've been making great progress. As soon as we have the votes, we'll vote on it." And now, In the spirit of trial balloons everywhere, we await the denial from yet other unnamed sources. Trump, U.S. needs a good shutdown in September to fix this mess. HEDGE. With Congress poised this week to approve a deal to fund the government through September, the first major bipartisan legislation of Trump's presidency, after lengthy negotiations, which have appeared to signal numerous folds by President Trump, apparently frustrated by the lack of tyrannical powers that a simple majority grants him. President Trump has lashed out this morning at disagreeable Democrats, and in particular Senate Democrats. The reason for the plan negotiated between the Republicans and Democrats is that we need 60 votes in the Senate which are not there. We either elect more Republican senators in 2018 or change the rules now to 51%. Our country needs a good shutdown in September to fix mess. As a reminder, the proposed government funding deal does not include funding for Trump's proposed wall along the U.S.-Mexico border or include language stripping federal money from so-called sanctuary cities, both of which the White House demanded at the outset of negotiations. In fact, as we reported yesterday, the bill has been seen widely as a victory for Democrats, something which has been panned by the conservative press. While the White House also backed off a threat to withhold Obamacare subsidy payments to insurance companies, Trump did secure increased military spending in the 2017 budget deal. According to The Hill, the comments are likely irked top Republican lawmakers, who have been frustrated by Trump's repeated attempts to intervene in the legislative process. The businessman turned president, in turn, has vented frustration with the slow pace of work on Capitol Hill. "I'm disappointed that it doesn't go quicker," Trump told Fox News last week when asked about the Republican effort to repeal and replace Obamacare. Commenting on Trump's tweets, Citi asks rhetorically whether this could be a case of cutting one's nose to spit one's face. Potentially problematic when the nose in question is attached to the current administration. It seems counterintuitive that a sitting president would want to shut down, unless he was to blame it on the opposition in order to force through reform, encourage a voter backlash. Bloomberg reports that the message appeared to encourage the Republican-controlled Senate to change rules that now require 60 votes to end a filibuster of legislation. Republicans reduced the threshold to 51 votes for Supreme Court nominees this year and could do the same for legislation with a simple majority vote. USD does not seem to have reacted to the president's tweet, "It can't every time, after all," which may just be more political maneuvering rather than a signal of intent. In any case, we're not so sure there is such a thing as a good shutdown of the U.S. government, and with what will be over $20 trillion in debt and a declining GDP by that time, one wonders which ratings agency will have the balls to downgrade the world's reserve currency this time? Meanwhile, it did not take long for Trump to get a response. Democratic Leader Eric Swalwell responded that our country needs a White House shutdown following President Trump's call for a good shutdown of the government.
That's the news. Join us here every day. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell. See you next time.
This is TBNN.